My name is Kevin Booth, and I'm, first of all, a proud member of the class of '78 of St. Paul's High School. And at this time, I'm also the president of St. Paul's High School. And it's good to be home back at St. Paul's High School. And one of the great privileges that I have here at St. Paul's High School in my role as president is the ability to reach out and to work with our alumni. And today, I'm just tickled to be talking to Rick Benson from the class of '75. Rick is an alumnus, husband, father, teacher, chaplain, counselor, author, and so much, much more. So Rick, thanks so much for joining me today for this conversation all the way from the Maritimes. How are you doing today?
Great, thanks, Kevin. Yeah, it is definitely a pleasure and certainly an honor to be asked to have this conversation with you.
So Rick, I'm wondering if for me, obviously, the Benson family, I'm a member of the class of '78, close friends with your brother, Jamie. And the Benson family, for me and for many of us through the '70s and the '80s in particular, view the Benson family as truly one of our iconic families here at St. Paul's High School. So I'm wondering if you can just fill us in a little bit about the generational connection that your family has had at St. Paul's High School.
Well, there certainly is one, and getting back to my dad, Patrick Campbell Benson, PC Benson. Dad was at St. Paul's High School, and it was downtown. He's up on the walls there of the first three football teams. Probably would have been rugby football, but 1931, 32, and 33. So yeah, Dad was very involved at the high school. Uptown in Winnipeg, and probably would have had a bit of a challenge too, because he came from a single parent household, and so that would have been a challenge for him, I think, way back then. And he and Mom met there in Winnipeg. Mom went to Calvin High School, I believe, but they got married at St. Ignatius Parish in 1941 during the war. Dad was in the Navy, joined in 37 and stayed right through to 66, so veteran of the Second World War and Korean War. So then after Dad retired from the Navy, we would all move back to Winnipeg, and Dad worked at St. Paul's College initially, and then as the overseas student advisor at the University of Manitoba. And so those of us who were still at home, my brother Chris went to St. Paul's, my brother Dave went to St. Paul's. My sister Leanne, for the 1 year, the Convent of the Sacred Heart girls came over, and so Leanne was I graduated. I forget what year it was now, probably about '73 or so. Myself in '75, and then my younger brother Jamie a couple of years later.
So quite a family connection to St. Paul's High School and into the alumni as well. When you were in high school here at St. Paul's High School, not meaning to date either one of us, but you were an iconic, a grade 12 senior leader when I came to St. Paul's in grade 9, and I have vivid memories of yourself and Chris Matthew and Jim Butch, Rod Corbett, those guys roaming around as seniors in the building, and the impact that they had on certainly me and the grade 9s at the time in terms of your leadership. So would you mind just sharing with us a little bit about your own experience at St. Paul's High School?
You know, Kevin, when you folks contacted me there a while back before Christmas to reflect on this, I think I said in an email to you last week, I said it's been a real privilege to spend more time reflecting back all those years, back to 1975, and those years at the high school. And in my leadership there, yeah, I was involved in leadership. You mentioned Chris Matthew. He and I were he was the president, I was the vice president. Chris Matthew, 2 T's, no S. And in football, Phil Chiappetta and Jim Buchak, all these people, Rod Corbett. There are so many people. I shouldn't start naming because I'm gonna lose a few of them. But and certainly the coaches and the teachers, Len Sitter and others. In all of those experiences, and that's one of the things that came back to me, and I think I shared with you before too, I did the spiritual exercises of St. Ignatius and have that as an active prayer, part of my prayer life. And so reflecting back on that, you see more and more, not that you didn't know it and appreciate it at the time, but you didn't do anything on your own. So as you know, and I appreciate that, and I'm humbled by what you're saying about me being one of those grade 12 leaders. Well, I didn't do any of that on my own. There was all these others that we all did it together. And we really had, a dynamic group of people, and not just my class, but, people before me and people after me. And so, yeah, certainly look up to those people and recognize that, and that's one of the beauties, one of the strengths of St. Paul's, the sense of community, because the more you're in community, the more you can excel and serve others, which is the direction that I was wanting to go.
I'm going to ask Rick, the spiritual exercises, I've also participated in them in my lifetime as well. And I always felt that the times that I entered into them were chosen for me, and that I was accepting an invitation by God at that point. I don't know why, but it was the right choice to make. I'm just wondering what drew you into the spiritual exercises?
Well, I'd moved from Antigonish. We had moved to St. John, where my wife is from originally, and I took on the role and was hired as the national coordinator for Catholic Campus Ministry and the national chaplain for the Canadian Catholic Student Association. And one of the things that my board wanted me to do right away was to get a spiritual director. And I thought, yeah, that's a good idea. I should do that. And about 3 or 4 months in our first board meeting, they said, "Oh, good, Rick. There's all these are good things. You check off these things on the list. What about your spiritual director?" And I'm going, I haven't done that yet. And so I reached out. We have an excellent apostolate, the Atlantic apostolate of the spiritual exercises here in St. John. And so I reached out to a spiritual director here who actually we journeyed together for well over 20 years until her health failed. And so initially just going for spiritual direction, and then realizing, no, this is something I'm called to be more aware of how God is active in my life. And really, I wouldn't have stayed as the national coordinator or national chaplain if I hadn't been doing the exercises, just because of the everyday challenges and more serious challenges that you're faced with. And how are you working through that with God in that?
Well, called exercises for a reason, I think, for all of us. We understand that. It's actually, and just an aside, but it's actually one of the things I'm incredibly impressed by here at St. High School is the very high percentage of staff members who've chosen to participate in the spiritual exercises. It's obviously it drives everything that we do. They drive everything here at the school. I think I want to come back again a little bit to high school as well, and. You obviously were a Crusader football player, as were brothers and your father, and you spoke to a little bit about. My recollection is that I think the number 23 that Jamie last wore was retired. Can you tell us
it was.
That for Crusader football?
Yes, it was. I mean, it was a real honor. I mean, when I first played in grade 10, I was a backup center and a backup linebacker, and wore number 48. And but one of the great things about St. Paul's is that there's all kinds of opportunities for you. So I worked very hard, worked out very hard, ran a lot, became one of the faster linemen that next year. And so I don't believe by chance. It just sort of happened that, well, our running back went down, and Len Sitter and Coach Chipman and the others said, "Okay, Benson, we're going to put you in as a running back because, you got some speed, And I was with Phil Chiappetta and Jim Puchak in grade 11. And Clevin Cleghorn as quarterback in grade 12. But and so, yeah, that 23, I said, it was free. And I thought, oh, I've got to take that number. That's Dad's number. So I wore that for 2 years with great pride. And Jamie, in my grade 12 year, was a manager. And I know he could have made the team if he would have come up in grade 10, but he didn't. He waited till the next year. And so then he took it on 23. And as Coach Chipman said, later on, after I left, he says, "You know what? Jamie wasn't as big as you, but he was tougher." And I said, "Oh yeah, I'm not going to argue with that." And so, so it's a real honor that the three of us wore that together, and and the Dad was around to have that sweater retired. Yeah, actually, I meant to put it back there. I somehow lost mine in the move. I accused my wife of getting rid of them, but so Jamie gave me one of the old 23s, and I meant to put it up in the back there. But anyway, yeah. So a real honor, and and I believe it's one of the things that St. Paul's does well is it recognizes tradition. Like here's, you know, a man who a veteran who, you know, was in two of the wars, you know, one of the first officers, Canadian officers, getting his rank through the British Navy before the war. You know, Dad was a very significant person at the high school and later on. And so for us as boys to wear that afterwards. I had Dave played basketball at St. Paul's, and my brother Chris actually was a guard. He won number 54. So yeah, the football tradition was very much part of it.
Well, and I think it really also really speaks to the intuitiveness of Coach Sitter at that time, and to know the history behind the family and the jersey, et cetera. So I think that was not only a wonderful gift to the Benson family, I think that was a great gift for the school.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And Len, I really, you know, thank Len for that. And yeah, Len was just such an amazing, positive experience on me. And I think I can say that for Jamie as well. Very positive experience, and taught us lots of life lessons.
I'm pretty sure he's going to enjoy hearing that coming from you, Rick. So thanks.
Yeah,
thanks for hearing that. Since leaving St. Paul's, it's so evident in your resume that you've lived a life of service. I'm wondering if you can talk a little bit about the impact of what we would have called the Christian service program back in your time at St. Paul's, and perhaps the influence that may have had in your choices as an adult after leaving St. Paul's.
Oh yeah, it had a profound experience. You know, we mentioned football earlier. I had this desire. Might have been a bit delusional, but still I had this desire to play professional football. That's what I wanted to do, which is great. And I know there's lots of St. Paul's graduates who have played in the professional ranks. But I would say that my experience at St. Amant changed that, because it's hard to be the tough guy when you got all these little kids jumping all over you in the gymnasium or at the pool. Because the St. Amant Center, those who don't know, is an institution for mentally challenged adult or kid children. And back in those days was from infants to 12-year-olds. And so, you know, Phil Chiappetta and I, and you know, a number of other people who were involved in that had such a great experience of softening us up and teaching us to love and to be loved. There was this unconditional love, you know, with these kids, and it was such an amazing place. And so then Phil and I and Graham and a few others, we worked there in the summer. And so, but the segue coming through that was in grade 12. At that time, there were no retreats offered. So I went to Father Eric Jensen. I said, I'd like to have a retreat, because the priesthood was one of the other things I was pondering and considering. And so he had a retreat for me. And so that came up about the St. Amant Center. And so then he loaned me a book by Jean Vanier, and that affected me a lot. And then he introduced me to the L'Arche community in Winnipeg, which I got involved with in grade 12 and afterwards. So definitely that service experience was really the catalyst to all of it.
So would you mind just talking a little bit about the impact of being involved with the L'Arche community here in Winnipeg?
Yeah, so it was, you know, like as mentioned earlier, Father Eric Jensen was the spiritual director, spiritual advisor for the community. So he introduced me, and so then I got to meet the core members and the assistants, and got out to the farm and spent a fair amount of time there, and really felt a call to this Christian community, and that was the pull, and. You know, experience was great, and then I, you know, like all my classmates, we went to St. Paul's College in September, and that didn't work out for me. That wasn't good timing for me, and so I left in November, and again, Dad was very supportive. He said, well, you know, you need to find some work or do whatever, and so I thought I'd take a year off, but that's when I thought I'm going to go and live in L'Arche. So I initially went to Daybreak in Toronto, and then Stratford, Ontario, and later on to Nova Scotia.
Well, the theme of service of others, of being a person for others, and community obviously comes through loud and clear in your experience at St. Paul's, and obviously in all of your life choices since. As of late, you've written a book, and it's called My Chaos: Searching for My New Normal. I'm wondering if you can just speak a little bit about your book, what motivated you to write it, and what does your book speak to?
I guess the first part of that question, what motivated me to write it, is I was working as the director of spiritual and religious care at St. Joseph's Hospital here in St. John, a Catholic hospital, mainly supporting seniors and their families, all our inpatients, but we had numerous other community health centers and methadone clinics and day surgery, a number of different things. And more and more people were coming to me specifically for grief and loss, not just death. And it's one of these things, be careful what you get good at. The mental health in St. John started sending me more and more people. And as I was getting more people, it was kind of drawing me away from being up on the floors. I started printing out things that I'd give to the clients or the people coming to me for help. So then I started putting it in a little booklet form, and I started sending it off to mental health professionals, saying, here folks, you can do this. I don't need to be the only one doing it. There's other, you've got the background to do it. And so as I continued to do that, and I handed it out to people who came to me, I'm sure my photocopy bill was skyrocket. Thank God for the women who kind of turned a blind eye to that. But I was giving it away more and more, and then it really, you look at it and say, no, this is a book. This needs to be shared with others. And so that was the motivation. How do I get it out to more people? Because there is such a need. For example, right now I'm going to be presenting with the Canadian Mental Health of New Brunswick. Well, that 8-week program filled up within the day that it was announced. There's such a need for loss and grief. And so, so the book was coming out of that. It wasn't because I needed to write a book. And it's a very humbling experience too, because it's like, okay, your name is on that. But how is it helping people? And I'm, I guess, in a nice position at towards the end of my career, that I don't have to make money from this. It's out there, and if it's something that you think will be helpful, and I know it has been because it's sold thousands of copies. So.
Without wanting to give away all of the content in the book, obviously, I guess one of the things I'm wondering about is for our school community here at St. Paul's High School, our students in particular, our family and our staff, the last 18 months of COVID certainly presents our own new normal. And I guess I'm wondering, from your experience, perhaps based on your book, do you have some words of advice or anything you'd like to share with those of us that are living in COVID right now?
Well, one of the things I do, Kevin, is I often summarize it in 4 points, and there's no stages, there's no magical 5 points, 4 points, 10 points, whatever. But I do put in that summarizes, and this is for us living in COVID as well, and we're all experiencing this without exception. But the first and foremost is that we don't try to deal with, and we're talking particularly about COVID, we don't try to deal with the stresses and the anxiety and some of the real losses, significant losses in COVID. We don't try to deal with it alone. And again, there's that great community at St. Paul's High School, not just the students who are there right now and the staff, which are great, but it's also that extended alumni community. Because you don't try to deal with it alone, you talk to each other and you support one another. So that's the first point. The second point, and all the research, all my book is based on evidence-based. This is the research it shows to be true. But the second point is that your experience is unique. Without exception, it's unique. And so, yes, we're all dealing with COVID. Yes, many of us have had loss of loved ones who have died during this and haven't been able to do the proper rituals, that sort of thing. But nobody's experience is the same. It's all unique. And so to recognize that and to support that. The third point, and again, this is very prevalent with the St. Paul's community, is that this is a spiritual journey you're on. And I purposely use the term spiritual because spirituality is out like this and even farther than my screen. It may include religion. It may not include religion. It may include different kind of understandings of religion and faith. And so, but it is a spiritual journey. And so there's no coincidence. You talked about, that you did the exercises just at the right time. Well, there's no coincidence there. Those things happen for a reason. Why is it happening? And so to recognize, the more we're able to slow down, things like meditation, prayer, being out in nature, all these different things, that allows us to recognize that spiritual connection that's there. And maybe it's even just through something in nature, a bird or something somebody said, you know. And then the last point is that it's finding meaning. And Dr. Robert Niemeyer is probably the top researcher and writer on this, is that it's finding meaning. Who am I now? And so when you look at these young students who are graduating this year from their high school, they have certain meaning. This is who I am. This is who I'm going to be. This is what I want to do. Well, continue to look at that and search for the meaning, because you're going to change that. There's going to be a thread that goes out throughout your life. There's a Spanish Jesuit actually wrote a very small little book called I'm going to lose it now, My Original Vocation. And he talks about, you know, that this is how you were born, this is who you've been all your life. So you may stray one way or another, but continue to search for the meaning. So for the young graduates, this is what you're dealing with now, but you're going to continue to find challenges, continue to search for that meaning. And it's not about finding your new normal, which I purposely in the title of the book, it isn't about, it's searching. We continue. So others, unique, spiritual, and meaning. Those 4 points are, I think, things to take home, because we can all deal with that.
I'm really glad I asked that question, and I love the response, and I'm really appreciative of the advice that you're willing to share, especially to our class of 2021 and to our students. We're learning to live with the new normal here, and I appreciate that input. Yeah. Rick, I really want to thank you for joining me today. It's for me, this is connecting with, and I mean this in the most respectful ways, an old soul. I've really enjoyed our conversation today. Whenever you're back in Winnipeg, please make sure that you come home to St. Paul's High School.
Oh, absolutely, and it is a coming home when I walk those halls. It's just, you know, right from the pictures of Dad to my brothers, you know, it's really a great experience, and all my friends who continue to be, you know, lifelines for me. So I thank you, Kevin, too. They're really fortunate to have you back there. It's, you know, again, that's that number one point. You don't do it alone. You continue to involve community.
A very Jesuit and a very Catholic concept, and known to all other cultures, the importance of community.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Well, take care, my friend.
Okay, Kevin.
Wonderful talking to you today, and I can't wait to see you in person.
Okay, take care, buddy.